Hello, hello, hello. Happy Thursday, y'all. Happy Thursday, and welcome to this episode of Bankroll Your Brains Thursdays. I'm Nicole Roberts-Jones, the Bankroll Your Brains expert, and I'm always excited to be here to give you insight that'll help you do one of three things. Number one, to get clear on your purpose. I call that your brilliance, because when you're standing in it unapologetically, oh, your light is shining. The second is the value tied to it. I'm going to tell you more about that in a second. And then the third one is how you create multiple streams of income from it. You know, we are on the eve of Black History Month. So this is Black Doctor, right? And so I thought that I'd bring one of my powerful sister friends to have a real conversation with you about the value that we have and don't have as a people. And so that is what we're going to talk about today when we look at listening for the trumpet of consciousness. Ooh, that's just that right there is deep, right? Just the title by itself is deep. If y'all don't know what that means, you're going to know by the time you finish. So as you come in, those of you that are here with me week after week, say hello, tell me name and where you're joining from. As I say every week, my grandmother used to say, don't come in this house and not speak. So I'm saying the same to you, right? Especially if y'all had a grandmother like I did. So as I bring our guest up, if you have questions, if she steps on your toes a little, because she just might, if you have thoughts, if it's good, all of that, we want to hear from you. So you'll see me look over here from time to time. My iPad is right here so I can see your comments. And if you have questions, I can bring them up and we can share during our time together. All right. So with that, let me introduce to you this powerhouse woman. Her name is Dr. Regine Michelle Jean-Charles. Now, Dr. Regine, and I'm going to end up calling her Regine because she's my sister friend, so don't forget she is a PhD, okay? She's the Dean's Professor of Culture and Social Justice, as well as the Director of Africana Studies at Northeastern University. Now, she's a Black feminist scholar who works at the intersection, I want y'all to get this, of race, gender, and justice from a global perspective. Her scholarship and teaching includes work on Black France, African diasporic literatures, Caribbean studies, Haiti, and Haitian diaspora. Y'all see why she's yummy, right? And by the way, I'm only reading part of her bio. She has authored over 30 publications and has appeared in books, edited volumes, and peer-reviewed journals on various subjects around race, gender, and justice. She has received fellowships from the Ford Foundation, the Mellon Mays Foundation, and several others, to name a few. She's been featured in Miss Magazine, the Boston Globe, WGBH, American Magazine, again, just to name a few. Her most recent book, The Trumpet of Consciousness Today, which we're about to talk about. Don't judge me about my tabs, y'all. Don't judge my tabs, right? Because listen, it considers at three social justice movements. Now, this is so deep. The Black Lives Matter movement, the Me Too movement, and prison abolition through the lens of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Listen, his lesser known speech, In the Call of Consciousness. Y'all ready? You got your seatbelt on? You got a pen and a paper because you'll need one. Ladies and a few good men. Welcome, Dr. Regine. Hey, girl.
Hey, sister. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
I'm so excited. And I have to keep my sister friend down because let me tell you, we have a good kiki time when we're
Me
together.
too.
And this woman will really shift your perspective and how you think about us as a people. And so although 30 minutes is not enough for her to really give you what she could, I want really to have a thought-provoking conversation. So let's talk about what brought you to this whole conversation of the trumpet of consciousness.
Absolutely. So, I have to thank you again so much for the introduction. And it's such a pleasure for me to be here. And I'm always happy to talk, as an academic, as a scholar, as a writer about my experience. And I think this is just such an important venue that you have here, that the Black Doctor is such a great, it's such a great platform. And so I'm grateful for all the work that you're doing. So The Trumpet of Conscience today is a book that I wrote. That really started because I was invited to give a talk, and it was in 2019. It was for Martin Luther King Day, and it was a Martin Luther King Day breakfast. And I always say, why is it always breakfast? Why, lunch, dinner? I don't know. They're always doing these breakfasts. But
Right.
so I was invited to speak at an MLK breakfast, they called it, and I was the keynote speaker. And I wanted to, and at first, when I was received the invitation, I was like, oh, like, I don't like these events because I think that they become very symbolic and don't have enough meaning. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to use this opportunity to say exactly that and to talk about that.
Mm.
And I also wanted to bring people's attention to some of King's lesser known works, right? Because everybody knows I Have a Dream, but not a lot of people. Some people maybe know The Letter from a Birmingham Jail, but he has many other lectures, many essays, many sermons
Right.
that he wrote
Right.
that we know nothing about. And The Trumpet of Conscience is actually the title of a set of speeches he gave in 1967, in December
Mm.
1967, for the Canadian Broadcast Company, for the CBC. So it was a Canadian audience. And these
Ah.
lectures still exist. They're called the Massey Lectures. In fact, they still exist today. Um, so every year, the CBC invites a speaker to give these end of year lectures. And they told him he could write about whatever he wanted. And so the 5 chapters in the book, which was originally called A Call to Conscience, and then later on became The Trumpet of Conscience, he writes about, really, you see the more radical side of him. He talks about his stance against the war. He talks about being anti-militaristic, being anti-capitalist. And so I was really intrigued by how much King had to offer, had to say at this time that actually resonates with some of the movements that we see today.
Mm.
And so I wrote that speech, and because I believe in never wasting your writing, I turned it into an op-ed. And then an editor actually approached me after reading the op-ed and asked if I wanted to write a book about it. And so I
Mm.
accepted that challenge, and I'm really glad that I did so, especially because this is a trade book, right? Which means it's a trademark press as opposed to an academic press. And so it's really given me an opportunity to have a different audience, from the academic books about that are more like feminist theory, a lot of criticism, cultural criticism. It's really given me an opportunity to engage with a wider public, which I enjoy.
Yeah. And I'm gonna tell you, I was telling her before this that I didn't get to read the whole book yet. I cannot wait. It's such an easy read, but the perspective that you give. Now, first of all, I'm gonna tell you the things that hit me. And I'm sharing this with you all because all of us come from different perspectives, different life experiences, even as Black people, right? And I'm so over about Dr. King Day. This is gonna sound mean, y'all. Hold on before you start talking about me, okay? Because we hear about Dr. King one day a year, like you said, in the morning, and then the rest of the day, unless somebody posts something in Facebook, it's over. And there's so much more than his dream to talk
Correct.
about. And so that's why I really loved the read and really looking at how you tie it to modern day movements. But before we start talking about that, I want to share an excerpt. There's a few, but I tried to pick two that I thought really speak to it. So I'm going to share this first one. Now, here's what she says, and I'm reading from her book, y'all. Okay, this again from my crazy looking sticky notes. Don't laugh at my makeshift. I couldn't find my tabs, but look. Okay, so with that said, here's what she says. King's vision at the end of his life can serve us today as we confront urgent problems such as the continued quest for racial justice, the problem of gender injustice, and the erogenous phenomenon of mass incarceration. I mean,
Mhm.
even just how many of you guys have seen the Ava DuVernay did this thing called 13 on the 13th
Mhm.
Amendment? I
That's
mean,
so good. It's
some
so good.
think you know, but you really don't know. Anyway,
Mhm.
let me keep reading. But this book also asks us not only to listen for the trumpet of consciousness, but also to
Mhm.
feel the wind of the spirit as we discern and interrogate our own conscience. Come on. We need to think together about how to create more justice and how to work together toward, excuse me, and how to work toward it with faith so that we leave no one behind and invite everyone to the table. Let me tell you why that struck me. I just watched the 6-part series, Women of the Movement. How many of y'all watched that? If you didn't
Mm.
Google it, that was good too. And I've heard about Emmett Till my entire life. But you don't realize all the things his mother went through. And the thing that when I read that what resonated with me is people were telling her at the beginning, don't say anything. Don't let people see your kids, I mean, your son in a casket. Don't do that because of what could have happened to her. But she said, if I don't do it, what could happen to other people's children? So
That's
she
right.
got to a place where she had a choice to make. Do I stay silent out of fear that someone could kill me? Or do I stand in the gap for other people's children? And I
Correct.
believe we are in the same place in history right now with all, and she gave a great reference to all the things that happened between George Floyd and Tamika, just all the, let me stop because I will mess up people's names, all the killings of African American people in like a short time
Mhm.
span at the beginning of 2020.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so it's like now in this world, it's easy for us because we have an iPhone. But at the same time, many people are still silent. So, how do you think we could literally begin to use our voice no matter where we are, no matter what level we're in this whole conversation?
I love this question. So I want to say one, before I answer that, it actually reminds me of something I talk about in the book, which is another speech that King gave, in which he retells the story of the Samaritan. And he
Mhm,
explains that what distinguishes the Samaritan from the other people that walk by the man on the road and just keep on passing by is that the Samaritan asks, if I, so the, sorry, the people that walk by the man and ignore him,
mhm,
they're thinking, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? But the Samaritan says, if I don't stop to help this man, what will happen to him? Right. And
mhm.
so that's so much. I mean, that's what I saw Mamie Till doing. And that's so much part of the work, right? Is that putting our decentering ourselves, right? And thinking about the people, the least of these, as we say, the most marginalized who are affected by these various issues.
Right.
Sometimes it is ourselves, right? We see, especially, this in the anti-rape movement. We have a lot of survivor advocates and they have an incredible job. They have an incredible role to play, and I believe they should be at the center of the movement. And then there are those who also understand that this is a human rights issue. Doesn't matter whether or not it happened to you, but we come alongside them in the struggle. And so in terms of using your voice, to answer your question, I think that empathy is very important, right? So being able to say, this is a struggle, as Fannie Lou Hamer said, nobody's free until everybody's free, right? So just because I'm sitting here and enjoying my freedoms, there are others who are being marginalized right now. And I need
Okay,
to
wait
think
a minute,
about
because you
how can I
dropping
be
nuggets. Wait, I gotta stop you because you dropping nuggets, y'all. And some of y'all need to write this down. Fannie Lou Hamer, she's dropped a nugget. Nobody's free to everybody's free. That's
That's
huge, y'all.
right.
I need you to get that. Just
Yep.
sit with that for a minute.
Yep.
Nobody's free to everybody's free. Even at this day and age, we think we're all the way away from slavery. No,
Mhm.
look, and
Mhm.
some of us are still dealing with slave mentality. Ooh, that's a whole episode by itself. Anyway,
That's
sorry.
true. Oh, that would be a great,
Right.
internalized racism, all of those things. So, I think it's important to have empathy. And then I really do believe, and this is, me as a person of faith, I really do believe that everyone has like something inside of them. That's why I love the title, The Trumpet of Conscience, right? That
Mhm.
there is a call to conscience, that there is a trumpet playing that you may not have heard yet, but it is there inside of you. I have a friend that often talks about how from a very young age, anytime she grew up in another country, and she would say whenever she saw a woman being yelled at or some sort of injustice related to gender from the time she was a child, this has really bothered her, right? And so no surprise that today that's one of the causes, that's one of the movements that she is involved in and working with. And I think that that's true for everyone. I think there's some kids that, I see it in my own children. I can see what are this. I'm like, oh, okay, this one is paying attention to when things are not equal, or this one is, we can't drive. I remember one time we were driving to church and one of my children started crying because, we live in a suburb and we were driving, our church was in the city and it was a part of Boston right there on Melania Cass. And they were like, what are these people? I mean, this was one of my boys. They were younger. I think they were like 5. But they were like, what is happening? Why are these people here? And they were just, their hearts were so broken to see that homelessness because they didn't see it every day, and when we're in our suburb. Trust me, we tell our kids everything. So, we told them exactly what was going on. And I thought, yeah, this one, God has placed a burden on this one's heart for
Mhm.
homelessness and poverty, but there, unfortunately, we live in a world with so much injustice, right? There's so many things. There's climate change. There's, economic justice, environmental justice.
Right.
There's, the refugee crisis. Unfortunately, the list goes on and on. And so I would encourage people to read more about it, to learn more about it, and then think about who are the people that you admire that are doing the work, and how can you go alongside them and support them also. And again,
Right.
I want to say we're all different, right? We need, just like it says in the Bible, we need, everyone is not a hand and everyone is not a foot.
Mhm.
But we need all kinds. So my calling is as a professor, as an organizer, right? I do a lot of local organizing in my town, as a writer, right? That's part of my intervention. But there's some people that we also need to be those CEOs, right? That are going to write the huge checks, that are going to, they have this Million Black Girl Fund now, which makes me so excited because we're going to use that, the people that started that fund, what they want is to support programs that will allow Black girls to thrive, right? Because Black girls are the most underfunded, and the nonprofits that support Black girls are the most underfunded in this country. So we
Mhm.
need people who are going to write those checks. We need
Right.
the physicians, right, that are going to do, we need everyone. I think no matter what your lane is or what your profession is, there is a call to justice that you can still
Mhm.
heed and intervene in.
That's so good. And as you're talking, it's interesting, and I want you guys to get this. She's not saying you guys to do all you got. You don't have to be in the Me Too, the Black movement, the imprisonment. You can't do everything, but you can do something, right?
Correct.
And so for me, even thinking about how I got started in this work, it really
Mhm.
happened for me after the LA riots. Now I'm from South Central LA,
Mm.
and I started
Yeah.
seeing Black girls struggling with issues like never before. Now, before then, back when I was in high school, I'm not going to age myself, but I'm a woman of a certain age, right? But when I was in high school, I didn't see teenage pregnancy. Listen, when you got pregnant when I was in high school, they sent you away. So you were scared to get pregnant,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And so
Mhm.
these day and ages, pregnancy for teenage girls, especially in the 90s, was common. And so I saw running rampant in my neighborhood. I had never in my life had to duck in the kitchen in the middle of the night while I'm getting a glass of water because somebody's having a drive-by shooting. It was like everything shifted overnight. And so I remember standing in my kitchen one night, getting that glass of water, feeling a gunshot. And I'm like, what happened? And so, in the middle of me feeling empowered by that, I volunteered at a program at my church. Now, back then, I worked in the
Mhm.
entertainment industry and I loved every minute of it. But that night, inside my church, working with young people, I was on fire. Like, how come there's some programs here for teenage girls? And so
Yep.
I walked my little 23-year-old self up to my minister of youth, and this is real talk, y'all. And I said to him, how come there's no programs here? And he said, why don't you start one? And I thought, wait a minute, I'm trying to help you do your job. I'm not trying to create a job. But what I realized in that moment is God was calling me to more. And so
Amen.
I did start that. And over time, that work connected me to this work. And I'm sharing that with you because I still have an affinity to women and making sure our voices are heard. What I
Yes.
realized in the 90s is, especially in South Central LA, when you are from a certain neighborhood, and I can say this because I'm from the hood, you don't have experiences. And so, therefore, the resources that you have are limited. So, you don't know what's possible for you unless someone comes in and shows you something different. I was one of the few kids that someone showed me something different. It happened to be my
Mhm.
YMCA
Mhm.
summer camp counselor. I'm sharing that with you because I want you guys to realize it could be as simple as mentoring a child. It could
Correct.
be as simple as marching in a movement. It could be as simple as going to make phone calls because someone's running for office that you know is going to affect change in your
Mhm.
neighborhood.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I don't want you to feel an overwhelm, but what I do want you to know is that your voice matters
Amen.
and how you move forward when you see injustice matters, right? So give us, or let me say this, what gives you hope when you look at today's social justice movement?
Oh, yes. Thank you. So, this is good because it actually aligns with what you just said. So I thought about, I love that story. And I think that that's, when you and I became friends, that was one of the things that immediately connected us. This calling, especially to girls and to young
Yeah,
women, is so important in mentoring and the work that you do, doing that in the church, especially
yeah,
too, and outside of the church. But it made me think about Tarana Burke, right? And so Tarana Burke always talks about, when she was organizing in Alabama and she met a girl that she calls Heaven now. And the girl had disclosed to her that she had been sexually assaulted. And Tarana Burke did not handle it well. But that's how the Me Too movement was born, because she resolved to handle it better in the future. And she said, just by saying Me Too, she would have been able to help that girl, right? And so now she does this work for all of the girls that but the symbol, that girl emblematizes the girls that are kind of lost, right, that she wasn't able to help. So I love that story because you never know when a small thing, even your inaction in a moment, right, your conviction, she was convicted by her inaction, and then that is what led to this incredible movement. And
that's good.
so
That's good, John. I look, we can't go past that. She was convicted in that moment. I always say to my clients that your comfort and your conviction can never coexist.
mm,
When you're feeling
good.
convicted, it's going to be uncomfortable for you to do something about it,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
It's not going to be easy. And if you look at any example of anybody, whether it's today or yesterday, they
mhm,
had to stare in the face of fear to do it. Even when I think of Dr. King, listen, he was 24, y'all, when he started the civil rights movement. Where were y'all at
mhm.
24? What were you doing? I sure wouldn't look walking down in Selma with all these people behind me thinking I could get killed at 24. So I really want you to get that. Your comfort and your conviction cannot coexist.
Mhm,
Sorry, go ahead.
mhm.
I just had to add that in because that was good.
So there's the people, what gives me hope, what inspires me are all of these activists. I mean, first of all, I feel that it is a great privilege for me to be a college professor because I love this age, the 20-year-olds, the 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds. They have so much passion, they're so aware, they're so woke, they are so savvy so much
Mm,
more savvy than I was, I think, when I was in college. So I'm very much inspired by this generation of activists, period, that I encounter. And then I'm also inspired by so many of these people that I bring along, that I talk about in the book, right? Tarana Burke, of course, is a huge light for me.
mm,
Someone I admire so much is Mariam Kaba. She's a prison abolitionist, and I talk about her in the final chapter. Um, she wrote a book called We Do This Till We Free Us. And
mm.
Mariam Kaba is someone who, she said she's known for having, she's brilliant. But one of the things that she said that really stays with me is, hope is a discipline, and that we have to be disciplined, right, in our hope, and that we have to continue to look for hope because, again, the injustice is large, right, and it can engulf us. But
Yeah,
hope is that light that will allow us to shine and see and keep. Once we become hopeless, we don't want to work anymore, right? Brian
right.
Stevenson, hopelessness is the enemy of justice, and so that's why we have to maintain our hope in order to continue to do the work. So I really am I get my hope from, these kind of ordinary, and even those like young activists that we don't even know their names. I was reading something the other day about these students, someplace in the Midwest, that had a protest at their school
Mm,
because a student was sexually assaulted and the administration wasn't doing anything about it. And I was like, I love these. I'm like tweeted and I was like, what is this school? Like, who are these young people? They inspire me. Um, and of course the big names, Angela Davis is another source. Her birthday was yesterday, actually, and she has a quote that I love so much. It's about reservoirs of hope and
mm,
doing, somebody asked her, how are you able to maintain this activism, for so many years, right? I mean, she's, we remember Angela Davis with the big afro, from like 40, 50 years ago. But now she's in her 70s and she's still advocating. She's still doing that work in California, right?
mhm,
Again, to abolish the prisons. And she says that it's in collectivity that she finds reservoirs of hope. So it's by partnering with other activists, right? By building the coalitions, by having the friends that you can say, oh yeah, this is how I'm working with the girls and this is what I'm doing. And how can we learn from each other and share? So really in coalition, we started a coalition in our town. And somebody was saying recently that they didn't expect when we started the anti-racist coalition that they would find for so many friends and feel that they
mhm,
really belong now in the town
mhm.
because of that. So it's in others, it's in people. And so in the big names and even the names that, that ordinary names.
Yep, that we'll never hear, but they're
Yeah,
doing great work in their own
exactly.
neighborhood. So listen, this book is so yummy. I'm gonna put this on the screen because we're not even hitting the this might be 5% of the book of what we're talking about. I want to share one more
Thank
piece that I
you.
really, really enjoyed here. And
Thank
this
you.
actually, you shared a study that you reference here, and it's a study by Vincent King, Harding, or Vincent Harding, rather, about King. Hello. And here's what he said in this study. Perhaps each generation must forge its own understanding of King's meaning, but, excuse me, let me start over. Perhaps each generation must forge its own meaning of King's. Okay, let me start over. I don't know why my tongue is getting tied. Perhaps each generation must forge its own understanding of King's meaning, must
Hmm.
determine and demonstrate the power of his impact and influence for our lives. It's
Hmm.
incumbent upon us to ask what is ours. It is to keep King in a box, because so many of us will put him in that box. That's what that King
Hmm.
holiday is put
Hmm.
him in a box. Is it to limit ourselves to the I have a dream speech? Is it to embrace the radical King? Is it to ponder seriously only once a year in January the question he posed? Is it to heed the blowing horn of the trumpet? Is to sing hosannas to his name? Or is it to build a better world? So this book is all about the tools to build a better world. So I want to thank you, Regine, because you give us so much hope. You give us so much insight and perspective. And listen, I know her, and I was like, "Oh, girl, this is deep." Like I didn't know her. So y'all need to get this book. It's there on the
Thank
screen.
you.
I love that you said support a black bookstore. Right? I live in
Yes.
DC, and there's a black bookstore,
Yes.
Mahogany Books in National Harbor. I actually know the owner. Y'all need to go if you're here in the DMV area. But there's black bookstores. You were talking about one in Boston. What's the one in Boston
Frugal
too?
bookstore in Boston. Yep.
So you can
Uncle
get it all.
Bobby's in Philadelphia. There's so many great ones. Yeah,
So support a black bookstore, especially Black History Month is Tuesday, February
that's
1st, as
right.
we air this
That's
live.
right.
So let's support black folk. And then at the same time, let's remember the value of who we are, the value we bring to the table, that we don't need a seat, we can make our own seat, that we don't need someone else's permission to fight for what is right. We just have to
Hmm.
be willing to use our voice, our story to do that. So as we wrap up our conversation, Dr. Regine, I love to say, first of all, I love to say her name because I can act like I know a little bit of French, a little bit of Haitian, Regine, and I can Jean-Charles, right? I can do the extra, anyway.
You
So
did
that's
a
me.
great job.
So as we wrap up this interview, is there anything you want to add to what we've already shared?
I think that, you just gave me this idea that I think that's a great way to celebrate Black History Month is to go to the Black bookstores. And if you can, go in person and peruse them and pick up a book that you haven't seen. But if you can't, you can also order online and support them. I think that that's so important. We have to support our Black businesses, and especially, with you talking the issues that you talk about related to economic justice. So thank you. I'm so grateful to have had this opportunity. I hope that people will certainly read the book and also look at look at other speeches by Martin Luther King, like the
Right.
Trumpet of
Because
Conscience.
look, he's
Thank
beyond just having a dream. I'm just saying. So
Mhm.
thank you for opening up our eyes. Thank you for being our
Thank
current
you.
trumpet of consciousness and for doing everything that you do, girl. I appreciate you.
Thank you. God bless you.
Love you, girl. So that's another episode of Bankroll Your Brilliance Thursdays. Listen, I'm always going to give you, sometimes I'm going to step on your toes. Sometimes I'm going to give you tools. Today, I really want to leave you with this. If today was a day that you got to go meet God face to face, would he say, what happened to you? Would he say you didn't use your voice, that you didn't take a minute to serve someone that needed you? That's what this is all about. Think about what a trumpet is. The first thought that I have a trumpet is when a alarm needs to be set, right? Even it makes me think of the movie Do the Right Thing, right? And really, it's a call to consciousness, a call to really open up your eyes to see what's happening around you. Number one, and then what will you do about it? So I want to thank Dr. Regine again for coming in to give us some great perspective and sharing pieces of her book with us. Make sure you go grab it. All right. So with that said, y'all, again, thank you for coming to this episode. I look forward to continuing to pour it to you every Thursday, 12 p.m. EST, as we look at both your brilliance, what is it, the value tied to it, and how you create multiple streams of income around it. I'll see you next week.